Hey, I am Ryan. At the age of 25, I reside in Sacramento, where I balance my time working part-time at a local tech repair shop while pursuing my degree in digital marketing. It may lack allure, yet it fulfills the financial obligations. I inhabit a modest apartment, navigate the streets in a pre-owned Camry, and until recently my existence was, shall we say, rather predictable. Commute to the office, attend lectures, and spend weekends with friends. Nothing extraordinary. Approximately a month prior, I encountered a fellow by the name of Dylan. He is my junior, having recently celebrated his 21st birthday. Our connection blossomed in the workplace. Unchanged dark humor, enduring passion for classic rock, and a persistent disdain for the trivial. Converse. He suggested that I swing by his place one of these days to hang out, get to know his friends, and perhaps play some games. I replied, "Sure." Little did I realize that his place referred to his mother's house as well. It was a Sunday afternoon when I first ventured over. The air carried a gentle warmth of early spring, caught in a delicate balance between the lingering chill and the promise of heat yet to come. I arrived at a pristine two-story home, its lawn meticulously manicured, adorned with an American flag proudly displayed on the porch. The sound of the bell echoed through the air as I pressed the button. Dylan swung the door open, clad in socks and sweatpants. "Yo, come in," he called out, beckoning me in. "My mom's here. Just pretend she's not." I walked in, and that's when I caught sight of her. His mother. I truly did not anticipate encountering that. She defied the typical image that comes to mind when one hears the word mom. She appeared to be in her mid-30s. She wore tops paired with tight jeans, a crisp white t-shirt, and light makeup. Her hair was casually tied back in a ponytail, giving her an effortless look reminiscent of a perfectly curated Pinterest board. Her posture, her presence, so effortlessly captivating. She appeared luminous. "Oh, hello," she greeted, her smile radiating warmth as she strolled through the kitchen. It must be Ryan." Yeah," I replied, momentarily losing track of my own name. "A pleasure to meet you, ma'am." She chuckled softly. "No need for that, ma'am. Simply refer to me as Vanessa." Dylan let out an exasperated sigh. "Mom, could you please refrain from trying to impress my friends?" "I'm merely being courteous," she replied with an innocent smile and a playful wink. Victory. We entered the living room and began arranging the game. She glided behind the couch a few times, seamlessly navigating her daily routine. Dylan and I were discussing a certain coworker who seems to have an endless supply of words while working. I chuckled uttered a thought impulsively, unrefined and unrestrained. "Your mother possesses a beauty that surpasses that of many young women my age." It simply escaped my lips. It wasn't until I saw Dylan freeze, controller gripped tightly in his hand, that I understood I had spoken my thoughts aloud. His gaze sharpened. "What is this?" It was then that I laid eyes on her. She lingered at the threshold of the kitchen, uncertain if she caught every word. The way she gazed at me suggested she grasped the essence of what I was saying. And then I could have sworn she blushed. Not the kind of blush that resembles a deep red tomato. Just a quick glimpse of her in pink. Her cheeks flushed and a subtle smirk playing at the corners of her lips as she turned back toward the kitchen. I cast my gaze upon Dylan. He appeared perplexed, perhaps with a hint of irritation. I hastily murmured, "Nothing, just, say she looks young for a mom. That's all." Dylan dismissed it with a shrug and returned to the game, yet I found myself unable to shake off the replay of that moment in my mind. Her gaze, that delicate smile, that spark in her eyes. As I prepared to depart, she accompanied me to the threshold. "Thank you for stopping by," she said, her voice now softer, more intimate. "Dylan could benefit from having more down-to-earth friends such as yourself." "Thank you," I replied, my hands shoved into my pockets, feeling utterly uncomfortable. I apologize if my earlier words seemed foolish. With a gentle tilt of her head, she offered a warm smile. "You did not." It was delightful. With a swift motion, she opened the door and gestured for me to step outside, just like that. Upon entering my car, I paused for a moment, my hands firmly clutching the steering wheel. That rosy hue, that radiant grin, that playful glance. In the days that followed, my mind was consumed by it. I reassured myself that it was inconsequential. It was merely a peculiar, uncomfortable instance that loomed larger in my mind than. Indeed, it truly was. It seems that nowadays people hardly blush at the mention of compliments. Wouldn't you agree? Perhaps she was merely flattered. Perhaps it was merely a figment of my imagination. Perhaps she genuinely didn't catch my words and merely smiled by chance. Yet, the moment arrived when the Instagram follow emerged. 3 days had passed since that visit. During my break at work, I found myself scrolling through my phone, and then I stumbled upon it. Vanessa returned home, accompanied by a notification revealing her fondness for a photo from 2 months prior. There I was at the beach, my hoodie draped halfway on, a blend of warmth and cool ocean breeze enveloping me. Merely a relaxed capture. Initially, I found myself gazing at the display. In that moment, I reassured myself, stay composed. She likely just wants to stay informed about her son's companions. Nothing beyond that. Yet I decided to follow back, and thus the journey began. Once again, Dylan has extended an invitation for me to come over next weekend. Mother is preparing the lasagna I mentioned to you. He sent a message that read, "You coming or what?" I arrived at around 4 o'clock. The familiar cozy house stands unchanged. The porch remains inviting, and the flag continues to flutter in the breeze. As I entered the kitchen, I found Vanessa immersed in her tasks. She wore an apron, snug jeans, and a fitted top that left you pondering how. It's remarkable that a person with a 21-year-old child can still possess a waist like that. "Ryan," she remarked, her lips curving into a smile. "Perfectly timed. The aroma in here is incredible," I remarked, nodding toward the stove. "It's my cheat day meal," she quipped with a playful smile. "However, I tend to overcook, so you gentlemen should feast as if you've been starved for days." In the living room, Dylan was busy preparing the game console for an exciting session ahead. I assist her in retrieving a few plates. She leaned in close at one moment and whispered, "Thanks for not pretending like I'm invisible." Most of Dylan's friends hardly acknowledge her presence. Glanced at her and offered a gentle smile. "You possess a certain magnetism that's difficult to overlook." She hesitated for a brief moment, then averted her gaze and remarked, "Good answer." Throughout dinner, everything felt ordinary. Relax. The lasagna was extraordinary, just as Dylan had promised. At the far end of the table, Vanessa busied herself with her phone, her fingers dancing across the screen. Every so often, she would interject with a wry remark or pose a question to Dylan about his studies. She exuded warmth and wit, embodying a presence that effortlessly commanded the energy of the room. Upon completing our task, Dylan dashed up the stairs to seize his laptop. I began to arrange the plates to lend a hand. Vanessa stood by the sink. "You don't need to do that," she remarked. "I have no objections." I responded, moving to stand beside her. "You prepared a meal." Her lips curved into a smile. "I have a fondness for you, Ryan. You exude tranquility." Many young men often exert themselves excessively. A moment of stillness hung in the air, a precisely crafted moment of silence, heavy with meaning. Then she spoke, her gaze averted from mine. "Your remark from last time about me appearing more attractive than girls of your age lingered in my mind." I stood still, caught in a moment of sheer disbelief. She faced me, her gaze serene, a subtle smile playing on her lips. "You weren't merely uttering those words, were you?" I cleared my throat. "I was not." A lengthy pause lingered in the air between us. I anticipated a laugh, an eye roll, or perhaps a gentle reprimand, but instead, she responded, "Such words are no longer spoken to me. Not truly. I find myself immersed in it," I declared. She inclined her head with a measured deliberation. "I understand." Dylan returned downstairs, and we both emerged from our reverie as if nothing had transpired. Yet, a change had occurred. I had a feeling it would come to this. She was aware of it. A shift had enveloped the atmosphere. We engaged in video games for a time, yet my thoughts were elsewhere. Vanessa drifted past on several occasions. Once, she let fall a neatly folded. A towel lay on the couch beside me, and her fingers grazed my shoulder, a fleeting touch that could have been intentional or perhaps merely accidental. Yet she offered no apology. As I prepared to depart that evening, she accompanied me once more to the door, as it was previously. "It was nice to see you," she remarked, her arms crossed as she leaned casually against the door frame. The porch light illuminated her face flawlessly, reminiscent of a scene from a film. "You as well," I remarked. "I appreciate the meal once more." "I'm always here," she replied. Next, with a gentler touch, "You needn't wait for Dylan to extend an invitation, you realize." Our gazes locked. I remained silent, her lips curved into a smile. Not expansive, merely sufficient. Upon her entrance, the door clicked shut behind her. I lingered on the porch for a moment, grappling with the whirlwind of thoughts swirling in my mind. The words exchanged, the fleeting glances, the palpable energy that danced between us. She recalled the praise. She raised the topic and allowed it to linger in the air. A shift was occurring. I simply had yet to uncover its essence. On a Tuesday afternoon, a message from Dylan arrived on my phone. "Off to visit my grandmother for a few days. If you need to drop anything off, Mom is home." I hesitated to reply immediately, primarily due to my uncertainty. Why he felt compelled to bring that up. As dusk settled, I took to the road, seeking solace in the rhythm of the drive to untangle my thoughts. I had no specific destination in mind. I simply felt the urge to escape for a while. As I drove by Dillon Street, an impulse seized me, and before I could reason my way out of it, I found myself pulling over. I reassured myself it was merely a casual visit, just a simple "hey." With that thought in mind, I knocked on the door. She unveiled it while clad in yoga pants and a snug black hoodie, hair swept back, barefaced. Yet somehow, she appeared even more captivating than usual, as if it required no effort at all. "Ryan," she exclaimed, her surprise evident. "I thought Dylan left you hanging," I said, scratching the back of my neck. "I understand. I was just out and thought I'd drop by to say hello." She leaned against the door frame. "Are you certain you didn't arrive for more lasagna?" I chuckled at that as well. She paused for a moment, then swung the door open wider. "Step inside." As I crossed the threshold into the well-known living room, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. The air was infused with the sweet scent of vanilla, mingling with a comforting warmth, likely from flickering candles nearby. She strode ahead of me, making her way toward the kitchen. I was on the verge of brewing a cup of tea. "Would you like some?" "Absolutely," I uttered, perched on the bar stool close to the counter. Initially, our conversations were sparse. She boiled water, retrieved 2 mugs, and navigated the kitchen with a grace that suggested it was an extension of herself, seamless and fluid. I found myself drawn to her hands time and again. The way she glided, the way she poured, the gentle sweep of her fingers as they tucked her hair behind her ear when it dared to fall across her face. As she passed me the mug, our fingers lingered in a brief, electric connection that felt like an eternity. Not a coincidence. Her gaze lingered on mine, revealing more than words ever could. We settled into the living room, without the flicker of screens or the clamor of distractions. We find ourselves enveloped in silence, the gentle steam rising from our mugs a testament to the warmth of the moment. Initially, she shattered. "You stand apart from the majority of his companions." "I shall interpret that as a compliment," I remarked. "You ought to," she responded. "Many of them seem unaware of how to engage in a genuine dialogue. You, however, gaze into my eyes." "That's uncommon," I shrugged. "Perhaps I simply wish to capture every moment." It brought a smile to her face. Truly smile. After a brief pause, she cast her gaze down at her mug. "May I pose a question to you?" "Absolutely. That praise from your initial visit when you remarked I appear more radiant than young women of your age. Did you really think I would take offense?" "Negative," I proclaimed. I expected to feel a sense of embarrassment, yet here you are, untouched by it. She gazed up at me once more, her expression now imbued with a gentler warmth. I found myself taken aback, but not offended. It has been some time since anyone regarded me in such a manner. Words eluded me in that moment, leaving me in silence. Then she added, almost a whisper, "And the way you look at me now hasn't gone unnoticed." My heart quickened slightly. With deliberate care, I placed my mug upon the surface. "Is that a negative aspect?" I inquired. She reclined into the couch, her legs elegantly crossed. "Poses a risk, yet it isn't entirely negative." Once more, silence enveloped the space. The atmosphere surrounding us was dense, yet not unpleasant. At last, I expressed, "I have no desire to overstep any boundaries." She inclined her head. "What if I am the one who is shifting the boundary? That moment will be etched in my memory for all time." It lacked volume and spectacle. It transcended the physical realm, yet everything changed. The tension extended beyond the confines of my mind. It was genuine. A quiet comprehension flowed between us. Our minds wandered to a forbidden desire, a longing we both shared. She rose to their feet. "Join me on this journey." I trailed behind her into the kitchen, where she retrieved a bottle of wine from a modest rack, along with 2 glasses. She remarked that Dylan has an aversion to red. Yet I truly do. We lingered at the kitchen island, our sips punctuating the silence. She recounted the story of her divorce, revealing how her ex-husband walked away when Dylan was just 14. She spoke of the arduous journey of rebuilding her life from the ground up, sharing how the years had passed without serious dating, as most men either felt intimidated by her strength or regarded her merely as a trophy. "You do neither," she remarked. "Your uniqueness is what sets you apart." I was completely unaware that I had been fixated on her lips as she spoke. I couldn't help but feel the weight of her words when she remarked, "You're looking at me like you want to say something." Indeed, I did, so why not just say it? I paused, then spoke. "You've been on my mind quite a bit." She nodded with deliberation. "Me too." We didn't kiss. Not yet. Yet, the distance that once lingered between us had dissolved. All aspects of the moment seemed to hang in the air, as if the universe beyond her kitchen had faded into oblivion. As I rose to take my leave, she accompanied me to the door. "I appreciate you coming by," she remarked. "I appreciate you allowing me to enter." I responded. As she swung the door open, her hand brushed against my arm with a delicate touch, halting my movement just before I could step outside. "Next time," she said, "don't ring the bell. Just walk in." With that, she closed the door behind me. I slipped into my car, ignited the engine, and lingered in the stillness for a moment. The path forward was irrevocably set, neither in my mind nor in hers. A change had occurred, and we were both acutely aware of it. The coming days carried an unmistakable shift. Uncertainty enveloped me. I found myself questioning how to behave, what words to send, and if I should even reach out at all. Vanessa had remarked, "Just walk in next time." Yet I found myself unable to do so. Ceased the relentless echo of that thought in my mind. The clock struck the hour of Thursday evening. I had just finished work, still clad in my gray polo and jeans, as I parked outside Dylan's house. His vehicle was absent. That held significant importance. For a brief moment, I lingered on the front step, caught in a web of uncertainty, before finally yielding to her command. I pushed the door open, bypassing the customary knock. She found herself in the kitchen. Without an apron or makeup, she wore nothing but a simple long t-shirt that barely grazed the top of her thighs, paired with cozy fuzzy socks. Upon hearing the door, she turned her head. Her countenance did not express astonishment, rather akin to a sense of relief. "I was beginning to wonder if you had a change of heart," she remarked, switching off the stove. "I found myself questioning the sincerity of your words," I responded. She offered me a faint smile. "If I hadn't meant it, I wouldn't have said it." I entered the room and gently shut the door behind me. The sound of that click behind me rendered the room 100 times more silent. I trailed behind her into the kitchen, as if I had traversed its familiar terrain 100 times prior. She was preparing a pot of pasta. Soft melodies drifted from the speaker, enveloping the room in the timeless charm of Billie Holiday. A languid haze, thick and enveloping. She dismissed my offer of assistance with a wave of her hand. "You simply sit," she remarked. "This evening you shall be the esteemed guest of honor." I lingered at the counter, observing her every move. All aspects of her presence exuded tranquility, effortlessly serene. She made no effort to win my admiration. There was no necessity for her to do so. As she approached with 2 bowls in hand, she chose not to take a seat across from me. She positioned herself next to me, nearer than she had ever dared to be. The dinner was enjoyable, yet our plates remained largely untouched. The conversation flowed effortlessly, as if we had shared a history far deeper than the brief time we had spent together. She inquired about my early years, my considerations for the future post-graduation, and if I have ever contemplated departing from California. I inquired about her reasons for remaining, seeking to understand her true desires now that her son had reached adulthood. At one moment, I remarked, "You appear to be happy now." She met my gaze, truly met it, and replied, "I am right now." That was the moment everything changed. Neither theatrical nor hurried, simply authentic. She leaned in gradually, allowing me the opportunity to retreat, yet I remained steadfast. Our lips collided. It was gentle, hesitant, yet sufficiently prolonged to convey that this was not merely a fleeting error. As we separated, she met my gaze and whispered, "We probably shouldn't." But before I could finish, she interrupted, and yet we had already crossed that line. She rose to her feet, glided around the counter, and gently grasped my hand. Silently, she guided me into the living room. We nestled on the couch once more, drawing near to one another. She curled her legs beneath her, shifting to meet my gaze. "You realize this can't develop into something more," she murmured softly. "I understand," I replied. She cast her gaze downward, absent-mindedly twisting a ring on her finger, despite it not being a wedding band. "Yet, I am acutely aware of the emotions that wash over me in your presence. And I haven't felt that in years," I said, nodding in agreement. "Then let us leave it undefined. Let us simply hold onto it for the moment." She cast her gaze back in my direction. Her gaze became gentle. For the time being, she reiterated. Our lips met once more, lingering this time, infused with a newfound certainty. As I departed that evening, once more, Dylan was nowhere to be found. I remained rather silent at the threshold. She did not either. A mere glance. The glance exchanged between 2 souls, a silent acknowledgement that the fabric of their reality has shifted irrevocably, yet the world remains blissfully unaware of the transformation brewing beneath the surface. The following day, I returned to work as if nothing had transpired. Dylan sent me a message saying he would be returning on Saturday. I responded with a thumbs up, as if all was well in the world. It was not. Saturday arrived, and I found myself back at the house, this time with Dylan present. He was boisterous, tossing out jokes, thrusting a bag of chips in my face as he always did. Yet Vanessa stood apart, nuances that linger in the background. Her gaze met mine from across the kitchen. Her hand grazed mine as she offered me a drink. A subtle smile, fleeting and unnoticed by those around. I maintained my composure. She held onto hers. Yet we both understood. As the night deepened, Dylan accompanied me to the door as I prepared to leave. "You're still planning to come by next week, aren't you?" he inquired. "Indeed," I replied. He rested against the frame. "You and my mom. You have an oddly harmonious connection." My stomach nodded. "I feign ignorance. She's effortlessly composed. That's the gist of it." He squinted for a brief moment, then nonchalantly shrugged. "Whatever. Just be careful not to let her overfeed you. I swear she tends to cook more when she has a soft spot for someone." I chuckled, the sound strained and uncomfortable, taking note. As I ventured outside, I cast a fleeting look over my shoulder and caught sight of Vanessa observing us, echoing from the corridor. This time, there is no smile, only observation. Our gazes intertwined, And in that fleeting instant, the world around us faded away. We danced with flames. We were both aware of it, yet it didn't seem amiss. We sensed a vibrant pulse of existence coursing through us at last. For weeks have passed since that evening on the couch. Since that first kiss, the boundary we never intended to breach has faded into the distance. And no, it did not descend into chaos. There was no grand explosion, no treachery, no heated confrontations. Instead, it transformed into a hushed presence, a subtle essence, merely ours. Dylan remains in the dark. Not in any formal capacity, at least. He harbors a suspicion. I can discern. He possesses intelligence, yet lacks the evidence to substantiate his claims. We have exercised caution. Silence reigns, devoid of messages or phone calls, and there are no lingering glances when he is near. When I reach the end, it feels just as it did in the past. A gathering of friends, immersed in gaming, indulging in copious amounts of food, and exchanging playful banter. As Dylan exits the room or steps outside to answer a call, Vanessa and I exchange a furtive glance. Only one. That conveys it all. Yet in his absence, that's when we truly become ourselves. The initial occasion we found ourselves entwined through the night, an unexpected turn of events. I arrived while Dylan was out late. We lingered in the living room, engaged in our familiar conversation. For once, her hair cascaded freely, adorned in a flowing cardigan, her feet bare against the ground. There was an undeniable quality to her appearance that evening, raw, serene, authentic, that rendered restraint utterly futile. Our lips met in a gentle embrace. She returned my kiss, holding me close, unwilling to let me go. As dawn broke, I found myself awake before she did. I lingered in silence, captivated by the serene rhythm of her slumber. I've never experienced anything quite like that. Neither obsession nor lust, but something deeper, genuine, a sense of tranquility. Our conversation skirted around the subject, leaving it unspoken. It remained unlabeled. Yet, from that point onward, it evolved into our cadence. Our encounters were limited to once or twice a week. Rarely, yet with careful consideration, always according to her own rules, but never faltering. She once confided in me, "This may not endure, but for as long as it does, I desire it to be genuine." And indeed it was. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we found ourselves on the back patio, savoring a glass of wine together. With her legs tucked beneath her, cocooned in a soft blanket, she rested her head gently against my shoulder. It's dangerous," she remarked. A smile graced my lips. "Because it is." She tilted her head ever so slightly. "Do you regret it?" "No," I replied without hesitation. "Not even close," she said, pausing for a moment. "What will occur if he discovers the truth?" I was left without a response. Without any pretense, I met her gaze and declared, "We'll face this together." That appeared to suffice. Those weeks held an air of peculiarity. We had no intention of crafting a future, yet it undeniably resembled one. It felt as though we inhabited a small, unseen chamber where time stood still, where it ceased to exist. It was irrelevant that she was 43 and I was merely 25, or that she held the title of my friend's mother. In that moment, we were merely two souls who stumbled upon an unforeseen treasure, clinging to it as if it could vanish in an instant. A narrow escape followed shortly after. On a Saturday morning, I arrived bright and early. Dylan had mentioned he would be out for the entire day, yet circumstances took an unexpected turn. He arrived home early, a surprise to all. I remained in that place. Vanessa managed it with remarkable skill, relaxed and easygoing. She passed me a drink in the kitchen as if everything were perfectly ordinary and asked, "You boys hungry?" Yet, the atmosphere was laden with tension. On that day, Dylan regarded both of us with a newfound perspective. Calmer yet more aware. Though his lips remained sealed, the unspoken questions swirled in the depths of his mind, palpable and pressing. Under the cloak of night, I sent a message to Vanessa. "It seems to me that he is aware." Her response came forth. "He harbors his suspicions, yet he refrains from inquiring." Only if he is certain. Shall we cease our endeavors? I penned the words, "Do you want to?" and paused before responding. At last, I set my fingers to the keys. Not in the slightest. She remained silent for a time. Then, a single message arrived. "Please come over tomorrow." Thus, I proceeded and we continued onward. We mastered the art of subtlety. At times, I would find myself visiting under various pretexts, returning an item Dylan had lent me, delivering notes, assisting her with her laptop issues. But each occasion held a deeper significance. We shared meals, we indulged in films, we exchanged stories of our days, we laughed heartily, we connected physically, and at times we simply sat in quietude, satisfied to be in each other's presence without uttering a sound. I once told her, "I don't know where this ends." She nodded and replied, "Not everything needs an ending." Yet, the truth is we found one regardless. A soft, quiet ending. Not to us, but to the worry. Suspicion began to take root among the people. Once, her neighbor caught sight of me departing and arched an eyebrow in curiosity. Dylan remarked on my presence being more frequent than usual. One of her coworkers inquired, "Are you still spending time with that kid? Or is it really his mom you're after?" I merely chuckled in response. It was never spoken aloud. We were not challenged by anyone, yet there were those who were aware, while others simply opted to remain silent. Several months have passed, and we continue to see one another. We remain unchanged, still largely concealed, yet not entirely. No longer afraid. Dylan has taken the leap into independence, securing his own apartment alongside a few classmates. We still get together occasionally, but it's not quite the same as it used to be. Life has transformed. And Vanessa, she remains in that house, radiating effortlessly, continuing to prepare an excess of lasagna. She continues to gaze at me as if I hold a significance beyond merely being her son's companion. There are occasions when I linger until dawn. Occasionally, we embark on day trips to distant places where anonymity reigns. We stroll together just as any couple might. Nothing about us is particularly unusual. In those fleeting moments, a revelation dawned upon me. We adhered to all the guidelines. We have just crafted new ones. She once confided in me that this sensation seems almost too exquisite to be true. I conveyed to her that this is precisely what lends authenticity to the experience. We exist outside the realm of fairy tales. We are not a source of controversy. We are merely two souls who discovered tranquility in the most unlikely of places. If that peace is indeed a secret, then it stands as the finest one I have ever guarded.